Hey, what's going on, Pinball Land? Welcome. It's another edition of the Flippin' Out Pinball Podcast. My name is Ken Cromwell. With me today is Greg Bone. And Greg, we've got a very special guest in studio today.
Yes, we do. Very unique guest.
Yes. He's going to be on the top of everybody's mind, the tip of everyone's tongue, and that is Mr. Bryan Vincent. He is the owner, Greg, of American Pinball.
The new owner of American
The new
Pinball.
owner of American Pinball. Bryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, glad to be here, guys. Yeah, new is right. It's like working day 3.
And it's probably been a whirlwind for you, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's been a little crazy, but it's been great. I wanted to be there, with the team day one and, kind of start talking about the vision of the company and, what our plans are and, just getting our feet wet, getting knowing people. But I've been working on this, behind the scenes, trying to get this deal done for about a couple months now.
That's pretty quick, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, it was sometimes acquisitions can take longer, I guess, but this one was pretty straightforward. The previous group was, ready to move quickly, and so we were able to accommodate that.
So with that, what we'll kind of hit the ground running here. What initially attracted you to American Pinball? And how did all of this come about? Was it something? I know you're a fan of pinball. I've talked to you for quite some time now. I know you're a giant hobbyist and collector, but how did you find out that they were, had the company up for sale or they would possibly part with it? And then, again, what drew you to them?
Right. So, this last year at Expo, I'd been talking to my wife and saying, I kind of like to do something, that I'm really, really passionate about in terms of work. I'm a pretty young guy. I'm relatively young, So I was like, I'm not going to retire and just do nothing. We had sold our previous company, which I'm still actually involved with. I kind of maybe a little background. My brother and I had started an LED lighting manufacturing company about 20 years ago, and we grew it. And last year we sold it. I'm still have some responsibilities there, but for the most part, things started changing, and I thought, I want to do something different, something I can do and enjoy. And I started thinking about pinball because my wife's like, well, that's all you think about. So why don't you go do something there? And I thought about doing some distribution. I went to the show, kind of, visit around with a couple of other manufacturers, and I got home and I said, man, I don't know. I'm too creative. I make stuff, I want to have a company that makes stuff. And, I said, I don't know that I just want to sell somebody else's machines. That just wouldn't hit the creative sort of, innovative side of my brain. I'm very right-brained. I like to paint and some other stuff. So I'm kind of like one of those creative inventor types. And honestly, I thought, well, I couldn't start from scratch. And I kind of looked around at manufacturers, and like my first thought was, who has a really quality base as far as manufacturing that I can build from? Not necessarily some of the other stuff, but as far as who can manufacture, and who might be interested in selling. And honestly, I just literally sent an email. I had to track down the AP owner's email, and I literally cold called him and said, hey, are you interested in selling your company? I'd love to talk to you. And that's where it started.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Hey, my dad told me when I was a little kid that asking is free.
That is true.
That's true.
Never harm in it.
Yeah, and it just worked out. The timing just happened to be perfect. It was just one of those things that lined up.
Yeah, how does that phone call go? So you call up, you're saying, hey, this is who I am. I'm considering purchasing the company. And they're like, yeah, I'm going to put you on hold, and let's put you through to the purchasing department. How does that go?
I literally sent an email to the current president of Aimtron, the owner of Aimtron, and just said, hey, let me introduce myself. I know this is coming out of left field. And, he responded and said, had his CFO and some people say, hey, visit with this guy and see what's going on. And so, I've done this before. With my previous company, we did a couple of smaller acquisitions, and you just kind of got to get started somewhere and just start talking and having a conversation. And like I said, timing was great. I think it was time for them. They were ready to kind of move in a different direction, And, I kind of knew from, I'm involved with the community. I know that American had some issues, and I thought, it's a great company though, as far as like, when it first started. And, I mean, Houdini, when it came out, was a great game. They've got some good things that they brought out, but more than anything, I know that they were building a quality product. Some of the other stuff's easy, but if you have to come in and fix a bunch of manufacturing stuff,
Hmm.
the time it takes is just a lot longer. So
Yeah.
that made it easy to kind of make the decision that these guys might be the right guys to start with and build from.
Hmm.
But there are a lot of things we got to change that I'm going to change.
As you said, you come from a manufacturing background. What
Right.
when you first went in there and you met with those guys, you started looking around, got a tour of the place, started getting into real talks, and like you said, you spent the last few days there nonstop. Coming from that manufacturer background, knowing like what you mentioned that, there is a perception, of their games currently that, in them as a company, what did you see when you walked in? Was there things that stood out immediately to you that was like, okay, with my experience of what I know, um, this needs to be changed. Like I see a couple of flags that I would like to immediately take care of.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a small team there. What I did notice about the team is I mean, I think they were starving for some leadership, and
Hmm.
so one of the things that, as far as the people that I met, I was really pleasantly surprised at how excited they were to have me come in, how hard they were working. There were some good things there. I think, if you look at what happened when they had their big sort of, I think they had some layoffs, back at the end of 24. They just haven't had the resources that they need to be able to grow the business. They've been sort of just hamstrung, kind of waiting, and that's just a horrible place to be. And so I think they were excited to see that, hey, now we're going to have some resources to go out. We've got some leadership to go out and do some good things. And what overall, I mean, I kind of call it. I told the guys I kind of have to keep things simple for me because it's easy for the team to remember, and for me to remember.
Hmm.
But my first order coming in, guys, was is to build trust, with the
Yeah.
employees, but more as importantly, probably most importantly, with the community out there. I think when you say we're going to do something, we do it. And people said, well, what do we need to do first? And I said, well, let's finish the code to Galactic Tank Force,
Mm.
because people have been waiting for it. I didn't build Galactic Tank Force. It's not a new
Yeah.
company thing, but if there's some things that still need to be cleaned up on that other end as well. So,
Yeah.
starting to build some trust right away is important. And then building on the good team that we have there. I mean, Ron's fantastic. He's really, really a good leader. There's some engineering folks there, some team members there that are really some folks we can grow with
Mhm.
and build on. But we're gonna
So,
have to add the team for sure.
and that being said, so you are carrying over a lot of people or a few people. You don't have to go into details, but you are carrying over some of the current staff that is there.
That's correct. Yeah. So the way people are like, oh, what did they purchase? Because I think in the press release it said something about being an asset purchase, which that's really more of a legal structure. Essentially, what we do is we brought forward all the assets. We didn't buy certain liabilities that we're not interested in carrying forward. But
Hmm.
as far as the people, they're going to get transferred. It's almost like interviewing for a new job, but they're getting transferred over to the new company, if you will.
Nice.
We're not moving, everything would be completely separated. Aimtron's not involved anymore.
Hmm.
The only thing is, in fact, we kind of padlock, I say padlock, we definitely isolated our part of the building. I didn't want to rip up the manufacturing. I mean, Chicago's great because like everything happens there. There's great people, there's a lot of resources. So, all we're really doing as far as our relationship with Aimtron is leasing the building, and some of their board sets, stuff like that. We have a negotiated deal to buy them on kind of a cost plus basis. So the board sets are good. There was a lot of R&D that went into that, so we're going to continue using those for now.
Yeah, earlier you had mentioned that Ron is great, and that's Ron Lindeman. Do you want to talk a little bit about Ron and his role now at American Pinball?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because I love
Ron's
Ron too. I agree. Ron's a good guy, man.
Oh yeah, I mean he's awesome, and he knows the industry. What I like about Ron is he's straightforward, and But, for me, like every company I've ever had, and I'll talk about Ron in this vein, is, I have a sleep in your car test. If you'll sleep in your car for a couple of days to come work with our company, like I'll find a place for you. I'll hire you because you can hire people with skills, but what you can't hire is commitment and passion. And I've always done better hiring people who are committed, to what they want to do. I mean, a dairy cow, she's she's dedicated to her job, but a pig, he's committed, right? He's going to the slaughter, he's coming with you, and those are the kind of people. So I like to hire pigs, but Ron's one of those kind of guys that's just totally committed, totally bought in. He cares about the community. It's almost like, it's a bird that opened from a cage because, he just didn't have the resources he needed before. And, the team trusts him. So he's going to be serving as our president, kind of our general manager and president. But I'm going to be involved. I'm not one of these absentee owners. I know people have been reached. You can't find me on social media because I don't do it. Because I like my life and I
Good
like
for
my
you, actually.
privacy. And
Yeah.
but I do. Literally the only place like thread or public social media place you can find me is on Pinside. So if that tells you something.
I would say that's a relaxing area to go hang out at is Pinside. That's very laid back and nobody's upfront or brutally honest over at Pinside.
You know what? It doesn't bother me. I mean, I look at it like I have nothing to hide or worry about. I mean, if you have questions, I'll do my best to answer them. Yeah, I'm not one of these that, like anytime someone says something, the first thing is like to be critical. Or I believe most people out there are trying to do the right things and doing the best that they can. And I try and remind people, we're not doing brain surgery. No one is going to die today as a result of anything. We're making and enjoying pinball machines.
The rumor on the street, and this might be a sensitive question, and if it's something that you don't want to talk about, I totally understand. But would you say that was American Pinball closer to going out of business than maybe the public realized? Because a lot of the speculation, leading up into this year was that the company might not have another game, and it might just kind of go away. And the introduction of you taking over the company is a breath of fresh air for a lot of people in the community. But I mean, how close was that to just not having having American Pinball existing anymore?
Yeah, I can't really, I can't say what Aimtron's plans were. What I can tell you is there wasn't a whole lot of investing going on, and probably for a lot of reasons. I will say this: it was kind of funny. Someone put out in the community somewhere like. It was like the second day I was there, and they were like, "I've been trying to get something for Houdini for 2 years, and they already called me back and sent it out today." So, so the question is not whether they'd be in business, but would it be something that really had a lot of, viability, or could you take care of customers? And so without them coming back and putting more investment in, and I can't speak whether they would or wouldn't have done that, it really wasn't a place where it was functional in the sense that you would expect a company who's serving the community and serving its customers to be. I mean, and I don't think the previous group would deny that. It was just one of those things that, they kind of said, we're not spending a whole lot much more money because, a lot of the things that happened. And some of that, really wasn't their fault. The company needed some change. I'll just leave it at that. It's probably the easiest way to say it.
Yeah. I get it. And I think, to your point, of anybody, because I think it raises some concerns, with you bringing people over like Ron and so forth. But I think that you hit the nail on the head that, it's not even their fault. It was just that lack of guidance, like you said, because Ken and I both, because we were having issues personally at flipping out with American Pinball and not being able to get parts and warranty stuff not being able to be taken care of and just anything like that. So, Ken and I, we went and we found Ron at Expo and we grilled Ron pretty good. And, I gained a lot of respect for him because it would have been hard for anybody to stand there and take what Ken and I was asking and giving him. And he handled himself very well. He was very articulate. You could tell that he was dedicated to the company, but you could almost see that his hands were tied and he was doing the best that he could, because I feel that Ron just kind of stepped into almost like a VP president type role unexpectedly just to kind of keep things alive kind of his own discretion, I feel. And I don't
That's
know if
right.
you feel that way too, but yeah. So I mean,
Well, and it seemed like he got very creative with other ways to kind of bring in revenue and to keep everything afloat, because at the end of
yes.
the day, he really wanted to see that pinball, division, which was the main division of American Pinball, thrive. And that was the only way that he could do it. I imagine there was a lot of survival tactics that went into place, to kind of keep the business going. But, I think a lot of people would have probably phoned it in and said, hey, thanks for the opportunity. I'm going to be out of
100%.
here. Because
Yeah.
he doesn't even live in state, right? So he had a lot of traveling. I gained a lot of respect for Ron, too. So I'm happy
Yeah.
to just see where everything's at.
And I think that
Yeah.
that's to my point to the community. Like we see Ken and I from a distribution standpoint and everything we have to deal with. We deal with these people all the time. We see things in and out, and I will have to say, coming from me, I'm very happy that Ron is staying with the company and is moving forward with it, because I do think he is an asset. So don't let previous issues with American Pinball, project onto him of he was any kind of issue, because I don't think he was. I think he was actually a savior.
Yeah, I mean, there's not. You're exactly right, 100% spot on. And there's nothing harder than having to answer questions about, hey, where are my parts? I mean, now
Mhm.
that's easy to solve. That's solved with liquidity. But I built some pretty good businesses doing the things. Principle was built out on. I always said that things you learned in kindergarten, like do what you say you're going to do, be nice. If you screw something up, just say, "Oh, dude." Don't say, "Oh, well, the part's gone because of my vendor." No, we got late in ordering that part. We totally screwed up. How can I make this right, man? And then communicate. Most people, like, if they're loading on something or there's an issue, all they want to do is be kept up to date, and a phone call goes a long way, saying, "Hey, I just want you to know I haven't forgotten about you. I'm working on this." Because no one's going to do everything perfectly, but the worst you can do is cast blame onto someone else. Even if the vendor screwed up, well, that's my responsibility, because guess what? That's my vendor. I'm responsible for me. I mean, the buck stops here, right? And I tell people, people make mistakes, and
Mhm.
things happen. We got a lot of moving parts, and when we're growing in this process, we're gonna. Some things are going to take a little time. Rome wasn't built in a day, and we don't want to rush something to market, and it not be something that's complete enough where we feel good that customers are comfortable with the product, the performance, etc. So we got some good plans going forward. So I'm super excited, and I think what American Pinball's been. Yeah, I always told there's sort of four things, and I kind of started with the sort of the trust thing, and that's, I think, number one. But and building out a team, we touched on that. That's number two. But the other thing is, themes and intellectual property and, titles, and going out there and getting some meaningful things that people are interested in. AP is always sort of done unlicensed, titles, and we're going to do some licensing. And we're already working on some stuff. We got some stuff in place, and so we're excited about that. There's an opportunity here, and that's sort of in the technology space. I mean, how do we make? My deal is I want to make it. My other company, our mission statement is we exist to simplify the lives of our customers, right? Like, we don't want
Mhm.
their lives to be more complex, and that includes our distributors. It includes our, actual customers that are out there buying and playing our machines. We want the experience to be great. And that involves, like, customer service. I always said we built a company on things we learned in kindergarten, but, we can't control everything right now. Like, we don't have the kind of huge name designer, right now that other people have. But what we can do is we can answer the phone. We can
Mhm.
make sure we're taking care of our existing customers. And then when it comes back to technology, there's just opportunities. There are a lot of things that I think we're not doing as an industry, that are really simple things to do. I don't want to get into details. I don't want to tip my hand, but we're gonna be creating some products and integrating some things into our machines that people are like, wow,
Hmm.
why hasn't anyone done that? We need
Mhm.
that. And the great thing about pinball and the pinball people out there, and people in the community, is they'll tell you what they want.
That's
Like,
true.
you
Yeah.
don't have to
It's like a
guess.
lot of the market research is right in front of your face. And for whatever reason, it
Yeah,
seems like there are a lot of decisions where people want to kind of take this concept of, I'm going to tell you what you need. And you never knew that you did, but it's like, you don't need to tell them what they need. They're telling you what they want.
that's right. That's right. Now,
Yeah.
now they may not tell you in a way that's super clear. You might have to ask some follow-up questions to make sure. But generally speaking, you're right. And what you can't do though is get lost in the 10 loud voices, and you got to make sure you're asking the 1,000 other people who are buying machines, because they may not tell you. You got to reach out and say, hey, what do
Mhm.
you think? And so, but generally, people tell you what they want. Go watch someone pull a pinball machine, and you can learn a lot. And you play a pinball machine, like when I play, what are the frustration points for me, right? What are the things I like? And what I like, I'm not a pro player, right? I'm not like, I'm just okay. I might like something a little different than what someone who's a really experienced player wants. So that's
Exactly.
a balance too, is, having machines that have enough depth and shots and things like that, that really good players want, but also don't make it unapproachable for, a casual player. And that takes some creativity.
With that mindset and that approach to kind of taking the community feedback, you brought up licensing. Do you find yourself being in a situation where you're open to the community suggesting licenses? Is this something that you take into consideration when you're trying to acquire licenses and bring them to the pinball machine? It sounds like original themes aren't something you're looking to dabble in for the time being, at least.
No, no, we're gonna change directions there for at least for a while. It's not saying that we won't do original themes. We're probably gonna we get up and running. We'll be producing 2 titles a year. We've got an interesting strategy. I don't want to get into the details of that, but right now, but people will hear more soon. But yeah, I mean, we're open to hearing feedback always, as far as what people want, what people are interested in. In fact, one of the things I think Ron's setting up, he says, we're going to be sending out a survey where you can go online and say, hey, here's the titles that I'm interested in. We've already moved down the path of some of those. I've been doing a lot of this in the background, and I actually have some relationships with some folks in the film and music industry that we're evaluating. So,
Oh, wow.
and
Okay.
we're going to be utilizing, some folks as well. We're already doing that to go out and try and find some licenses that matter. Like, I don't want to go. I don't necessarily think, there's different approaches. You can go out and just get a Disney license, right? Or you can go out and get like, kind of like, Dutch did with the Big Lebowski, something that's more cult classic. You can do, music. There's a lot of different approaches you can take, but but the key is theme integration too, right? I mean, you can go
Yeah.
get this title, but if it's all wonky and doesn't fit into like how you play, how you progress through the game, it doesn't matter as much. And I always say you can have the best license in the world, but if it's a crappy shooting game, who cares, right? I'd rather have a good shooting game that's fun to play and doesn't necessarily have the best license. Although me, I'm kind of an artist, so like part of my decision making process, I'm a little bit different maybe than some people. Is, man, I like the art to be beautiful. I like the machine to be beautiful, and that's what's important to me. But that may not be important to everybody. And so one of the models that we're going to, and this is I did this with my previous company, on the manufacturing side, we're going to go to more of a bespoke model. And this is what I can tell people, when you go to, if I want to go buy a Lexus, I can go to the Lexus site and I can configure my Lexus for whatever I want. Right. Because what I hear a lot is people say, oh man, I like that machine. I hate those chrome legs. I wish they had done it in black. So, what we want to do is when you can go online, or even a distributor, there will be some stock items that we sell, but people can go online and customize the machine they want with a topper, with whatever powder coating options they want. They can choose an alternate art package. And so, it's like when you go buy a Lexus, the base model's 50 grand, but you can go up to 70 grand if you want to buy all this other stuff. And it gives people choices. It creates a price point where people can come in and say, hey, this is the machine I want. I'm happy with this. But if you're like me and you like to put a bunch of stuff on your machines, including mods and other things, it gives you that option, and it tracks with your serial number. So you place that order, you're going to get a serial number assigned on that machine, and it's going to track you all the way through. And, you'll get an estimated ship date. The product will be packed and it'll ship, to your distributor or, directly to you, depending on how you're working that out with, let's say, flipping out. And they can actually help you, do that. So, you could call Greg or Zach or you and just say, hey, I want a machine. And they can say, hey, go to their site. You click Flipping Out Pinball as your distributor. It'll go through and build that whole machine for you. And then Flipping Out will coordinate having it delivered. But you'll get your own serial number. And when you get it shipped, you'll have exactly what you want. Now, some people say, hey, I just want someone with the the blue powder coating on the legs and the wire forms. And Greg will say, "Oh yeah, we got one of those. Hey, we'll get it out to you today." Some people want, they want to go and place the order, but if people are willing to wait a little and they say, I just cannot stand that art package. I got to have the different art package, and it's not in stock. You can go in and customize it. So, I mean, I think that's a nice feature. Like, that's giving people what they want, right? I'm not going to make them take something that they don't want or have to come back later and change the legs, or I've got piles full of legs. And I know that's a little different. We're working out the details, but we're excited to partner with our distributors to do that. Really, if you think about a pinball machine, you're not really changing. The most complex thing are all the stuff on the playfield. Adding a toy or mech is actually pretty straightforward, and or changing artwork on the cabinet. We've got a good relationship with some folks that do powder coating where they'll do some small batches for us so we can carry, you know, two or three different options of powder coating. Like I would imagine, like, let's say, you're buying a machine and all the wire forms, the rails, everything's like a chrome color. But you want a blacked out version, or you want maybe a color that integrates with the theme, you can choose a powder coating option where the wire forms, everything will be matching, including the hinges. So, you get a complete like option there if you want to powder coat,
Yeah.
but I
That
don't
was
want
one of the
to
things. That was one of the things running through my head that I think I was a little concerned about as you were saying that, is, what kind of parts issues that you were going to run into, with your BOM, anything else of being able to have those or just keeping those in stock, or what that was going to look like. As we all know, within manufacturing, you got to order so many of certain things and so forth. And I didn't know if you thought that would end up being some kind of issue, but I think you kind of answered, having some of those smaller companies in a place that you can utilize with a quick turnaround time for small batches is
And that's where the
essential.
market's changed in printing. I mean, think about it. I mean, we can digitally print things today where, you didn't have that flexibility. You had to screen print something. You had to order the
Yeah.
screens. You had to get it set up. It took a certain minimum to kind of get your price where it needs to be. But today, digital printing with, even, powder coating, there are people out there who will powder coat small batches for you. And so,
So do you
we're not going to, we're talking about ordering 50 at a time as it goes through the line, not,
Yeah.
having to wait
Do
on
you think it'll be
200.
something that you start off small with, doing something like, okay, we're going to have some alternate artwork, alternate back glass, alternate cabinet decals, that sort of thing. We're going to have powder coat options. Do you see starting off with just smaller things like that and then progressing up to mods and stuff after you kind of see if this works and after you've implemented it for a while? Or are you going to kind of come out of the gate with this, first game and, well, okay, we've created additional mods that can, multiple mods that can be installed, shooter rod, all that stuff? Or again, are you going to kind of keep it a little small at first with options to see how things run?
Yeah, I think we're gonna keep it a little smaller at first, but yeah, I mean, we're not gonna have every option, probably in game 1, but
Hmm.
pretty quickly after that, it's gonna evolve into sort of full package of options to choose from.
Okay.
And, so yeah, I think, we're gonna do this stepwise, but the key things that people want are art packages, powder coating, things like that. I don't think it's gonna be a deal where you can choose your own playfield art. Maybe eventually,
Hmm.
but we're gonna start with, some of the basic things people ask for. Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know if game 1, but even, like, things like a shooter rod, right? Do you wanna we have an alternate shooter rod you can pick if you want that.
Hmm. Nice.
Considering game one, because you referenced game one a couple times, I love it. And I think the question that everybody's going to want to have or has right now is like, when would be a realistic time frame for us to expect game one, whether it be an announcement of a theme, the game is on the line. And again, not to push the issue, but I'm sure talking about the company and the background and all the things that are going to be in place is great. But it's like, so when does this start happening?
So, and I think it'll make more sense as you see sort of our strategy and when we release game 1, but game 1 should be out this year,
Okay.
and it'll be before Q4. At the
And
latest,
when
I
you
hope.
say that, will it be the announcement, or are you thinking games in box starting to ship?
I'm thinking games in box. So we're gonna have a certain number of games in box and a certain stock. So, And then, obviously we'll continue with production as people also choose to, customize their games. So,
Okay.
it's not a deal. I'm looking at our production capacity, kind of seeing where we can be there. The great thing is, we can add another shift. We've got more room. We just added, in the process of adding the third line so that we can ramp up and, well, we have a good core group of people, but we're also adding people that, for the production and assembly positions, as well as, we're in the process of adding a couple of artists and coders as well. And so I feel like we're in pretty good shape. If as far as one of our big licensed titles, not that this wouldn't be big, but that's going to take a little time. Obviously there's a lot to do there, and again, we don't want to let something out to market that's not ready to go.
With your manufacturing background, Bryan, when you walk a pinball manufacturing floor, walking through American Pinball, considering what you've done in the past and how you've automated things, like pinball is very unique in the sense that it's very hands-on. It's very
Right.
handcrafted. There's not a whole lot of electronic, robotic movements for assembly. Like, have you figured ways or thought about ways in your mind in which you could streamline or even revolutionize portions or even the entire assembly process for pinball? Because it just seems like it's always been the same for the most part for decades.
Yeah, I've given some thought to some of that. One of the things that I think, as far as a model that we didn't go to at my previous company, that I think kind of Americans doing right now, but we got to look at it piece by piece. Is there's been this, this light assembly model works really well for smaller companies like AP, where you're not fully vertically integrated. The problem with being fully vertically integrated, where you're doing everything from, every little cabinet to, is you got to keep that factory full. And then all of a sudden you start making decisions around filling a factory versus making games. So I want to be smart about it. I don't want to create a model where I'm all about being streamlined and automated, because that will actually start, I think, can start hindering creativity. So we always kept a fairly light manufacturing model, even if it cost me a little bit more. I think the reliability testing is just the key thing, and that you have test points throughout the process, so that what you don't want to do is, you don't want to find out at the very end of the line that you have a problem with something that creates more time to go back, and if you have to pull a flow field back out or do something like that. I think those are the things to avoid, and having the right standard operating procedures, which actually AP has some really good ones in place. I think they've done some good things there, because the previous owners come from sort of a manufacturing, obviously,
Right.
a manufacturing background where that's important. So, am I gonna? Are there things to revolutionize pinball as far as the manufacturing side? This Henry Ford sort of process actually works pretty well. So I think it's more of a push pull line, where you have people. When you're smaller, you have one person doing a lot more tasks. And as you get bigger, you'll have people that are more focused on the tasks that they do. And so I think we'll see more of that as we grow. But, am I going to fully integrate like every little bit in the factory? I think it's a mistake. I don't want to make decisions. I want to make decisions on creating great games, and manufacturing shouldn't have a lot of impact on that, right? Manufacturing should be able to respond to the creative side of what we're going to build.
No octo manufacturing.
No,
You ever
no.
hear that? You ever hear that term, Greg? Little octo.
Yes.
All right.
No, no,
All right.
no, no, no.
Oh, yes.
Hey, I'm one of these guys that like keep it simple.
Well, and man, I'll be honest with you in this whole thing. I think that if you can just get back to the original build quality of what AP was in their early days, and create that same quality control, because other than the EOS switches on Houdini, that was a solid game. It was a super solid game.
Yep.
That thing was a tank from every standpoint. Oktoberfest really wasn't that far off. Some stuff, the early models I felt of Hot Wheels was the same way, and that kind of declined over the years. And I think it's like you said, I think it was just Aimtron stepping back a little bit, and the company being in some not disheveled, but just lack of someone standing up in there. I think that
Well,
if you
one of
can
the
get
crazy decisions was, hey, let's throw a cheap power supply in the thing, and
yes, yeah, we
instead of
had
having to
tons
go
of
pull
power
them
supply
out,
issues.
it's like
Yeah.
I produce and sell. There are other business. We produce and sell
Mhm.
50. Well, we buy, I should say. We don't actually make them, but we integrate them into our systems. 50,000 power supplies a month for outdoor use that have to go on the tops of buildings. Like
Yeah,
you don't mess around with the power supply. It's just like
yeah, I agree.
you buy the best power supply out there because that's something. If that fails, your machine's not working at all, and
Exactly.
that's an easy thing. Like I just said, we're not doing that. So
Yeah,
that fixes that problem. And I
yeah.
have some, I can bring some products to bear there as well. That we make sure we're building the. To your point, Greg, we got to build good quality machines. And
Yeah.
I think it's not like some of the decisions they made were small things. It wasn't like big things that created it, and they're very fixable. So I'm not
Good.
that concerned about getting right back to that quality point.
Good, because I mean, yeah, they were good games, and I think that if you couple that with bringing some good titles, because I think that was always. I mean, I'm a lover of Houdini. It's still one of my favorite games. Zach and I on stream had proven quite a few people wrong that it was a very difficult, tight shooter, which it is. But once you learn the shots, it opens up, and I mean, we
It
blew
does.
that thing up on stream. It was crazy, but I think going to getting good license and moving forward, and if you can get back, like you said, to that quality control that they had, a good solid machine, man, like I think you have a winning recipe on your hands that will take them above and beyond what they were when they were in their best.
Yep. Yep. That I agree 100%. And that's why I said there's if the press release that we first put. And by the way, it's funny, all these people are like, who's this venture capital firm or this private equity firm? It's like, yeah, because I think it had our family limited partnership name in the press release. This is JB Vincent LP. And that's basically, me and my wife and my three kids.
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah.
so there's
Yeah.
not like, it's not like we have any. The good thing about that is like I don't have to answer to anybody, right?
Yeah.
I get to make decisions based on, what's best, not like somebody telling me, oh, you got to shave 4% off of this. And by the way,
mhm,
when I buy companies, our family buys companies, we buy them for life. We're not buying companies to resell them. That's
Right.
not, especially like this, because this is my hobby too. So,
yeah.
this is not something we're just going to go out and, we're looking to improve it and sell it. I just want to make that clear because some people, I think there was some questions about that.
Can I bring up just going back into the company's history? Recently, the rumor was that there was a pinball machine that was almost going to be released, and the rumor was that the title was Cuphead, and it was designed at the time by Ryan McQuaid, who'd come over from the homebrew community, worked for American Pinball. When things weren't working out, they parted ways. Are we looking at resurrecting any old or existing titles that might have been in the works, or are you in the kind of the mind frame where you just want a fresh start and it's more of like American Pinball 2.0 at this point?
Don't know yet. Those are some things that I'm evaluating. As far as I know, that project's kind of dead, but nothing's off the table. I mean, when changes happen, sometimes it reopens doors, and I'm not closed minded at all to taking a look at that. But I'm also, number one and foremost is let's look to the future, right? I mean,
Right.
sometimes it's easier, and the tendency is to when you clean out the garage, you're hanging on to some stuff just because, oh, let's keep that around. And sometimes it's just best to clean out the garage. But as far as my understanding of that game 7, I don't have much of the details on it, or I can't share much of the details on it. But
Sure.
my understanding and what I can tell you is it's a very good game. And that's really, all I can
No, that's
say
fair.
right now.
That's
Yeah, I
fair.
get it.
Because you're in a tough spot in the sense in my mind that I mean there are less successful pinball designers than there are like starting quarterbacks in the NFL, right? So,
Yeah.
and I think when everybody thinks about pinball and designers, you probably have like a core 3 to 4 that are considered absolutely elite. And then
Yeah.
you've got maybe, another 5 to 10 that are still great designers, but maybe they're just not coming out with consistent titles that the public's asking for. So for you coming over, taking over the company, can you say, do you have a designer on staff right now? And if you don't, like, what does that look like as far as recruiting a designer? Does it come from a fresh new designer? Are you open to people changing employment? Like, how do you get your team?
So again, I'm getting back to the sleep in your car test. Like, here's the problem with some of the big designers out there. And not a problem. I mean, I would love to, you know, hey Keith, if you're listening, call me. I mean, I'm not like, I mean, heck, or whoever, I'm not opposed to big designers. What I
Yeah.
want someone to come over is to be bought in and say, hey, we can do something that's really special here. Right. And we're gonna go build out something that's awesome. What I will say for the designers is I want and I'm looking at both. By the way, there's some brew guys out there that are super creative
Sure.
and are doing some really interesting things. What I'm looking for is creativity. We're going to take a risk or two probably with a game, just trying to do some new stuff. But what I'm really looking for is someone who's really creative. The good thing about coming over to American is like I'm not going to hinder people. I'm not one of these hands-on like, okay, that's going to cost an extra $12. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
I'd
Right.
rather build a great game, and I think from a design standpoint, if you join American, you're going to have a lot of freedom and a lot of autonomy. And so, I don't, I want, designers are creative people, but I also want designers who, this isn't just designers, this is any employee that don't have big egos and are
Yeah. You don't
coming
want a
in.
diva in there, right? Because it
Yeah,
just wrecks the whole team unity.
that's
I
right.
totally get it. Sure.
That's right. And I'd rather have someone who's young and hungry and has a great attitude and can be cut loose creatively than if someone big's going to come in and start, you know culture is everything. Like the
Sure. I
team is
agree.
everything. And it's not, the way I look at it, it's not that designer's game, it's the team's game. Yeah, the designer's going to have their mark on it. They're going to be, but you know what? Just as much effort and work went into coding, just as much effort and work went into sound, to artwork, to all
Quality
those things. And
control, assembly.
it's
You
it's a
can't,
full
yeah. It
team
takes a
effort.
village. Yeah.
Exactly, Ken. So that's the kind of people with that attitude I'm looking for. But there's some great designers out there, and would I love to have one come over and say, you know what, I'm ready to do something different? Sure, sure, and I'll pay them, by the way. You can't come over for nothing,
That's great.
but
So
we're
will
yeah,
you be walking the homebrew sections of like Texas Pinball Festival and kind
yeah.
of feeling out the recruits?
So one thing I know that American Pinball has they kind of split off and kind of had some other acquisitions or things they were selling, such as the Whirlaball, and then they had the Polycades. Are you taking all of that over as well, or is that a separate company and a separate brand?
I am taking that over. It's under the American Pinball company umbrella,
Hmm.
but it will be completely independent. We're not bringing rollerballs to Expo. We're
Mm,
a pinball company first. Um,
Okay.
there's opportunities there and some other markets that are adjacent. And I think a lot of that, you brought this up earlier. I mean, Ron had to figure out ways to make money, right? But
Yeah.
some of those are good opportunities too. But what I want, the team will be completely firewalled. What I don't want is anyone getting distracted from our core business on something like that. Some of those are pretty easy to execute though, and we have a good relationship with Poly K. They've been, we're working with them on shipping and doing some stuff with their
Mhm.
games, and then we have Rollerball, and I think that's great for the entertainment market, but it's a small piece, and it will be allowed to continue and up until the point at which it ever distracts what we're doing on the pinball side.
Nice.
That I've made very clear.
With the focus on pinball, then, I mean, what's the company goal? Is it to be dominant, like the big player? Are you looking to go up against, some of the bigger companies? Are you looking to just be
More
annihilating
boutique.
everybody in the like smaller niche boutique type of thing? Or I mean, what are you looking to do?
So the market will tell us that.
Yeah.
When I started Principal, we set up the company. This is my other company. I kind of pull back to it a little bit because kind of I know from that history and kind of the way things happen. But we started that company in 1,000 square foot cinder block building with a dog room. It was an old dog grooming facility and a shed in the back. And and 8 years to 10 years later, we were the number one. We had the largest provider in North America, and now we're the largest provider globally of LED lighting to the commercial brand signage industry. Do I want to do that again? Probably not. I enjoy my family and I enjoy my sanity. So what I will say is we're going to make great games. If we make great games and we treat our customers well, we'll probably grow. If we don't, we won't grow.
Sure.
And, so that's what I mean by the market's going to tell us. The market reward of growth will be doing the right things. But do I have any vision of being the number one biggest manufacturer and, going and trying to dominate Stern and JJP? No.
Right.
I mean, could it happen? I mean, what happened with me in this? I always say our in the sign business, our competitors were our best customers because they just kind of messed things up, and we just sort of, if you do the right things happen. So I'm not worried. I'm not. I think
the reason I ask
great
is
games. Yeah,
I think there's always somebody has a new pinball company, and it seems like in the past we've seen several startups that might have had good intentions. Goals were set that were very lofty, and a lot of people thought were unrealistic, right? So you're setting these goals that just probably aren't attainable. So you immediately put yourself in a situation where it looks like you're failing, and it's because you set lofty goals. So it's refreshing to kind of hear you say that, the market's going to kind of determine the direction of the company and where we pivot to, versus saying, hey, we're going to out-manufacture everybody here, and we're going to make 6 games a year.
Yeah. And I mean, but at the same time, we also have to be prepared. If, I have to be prepared that when we release a game, it's going to be wildly popular and we can support it from a manufacturing standpoint, right?
Right.
So there's sort of a trade-off there. But yeah, I mean, I think, we're going to push this with humility. We're not going to go out there trying to toot our own horns. We're just going to, I think people say, hey, Bryan, you're saying all the right things, but let's wait and see what happens, right? And I would say the same thing, right?
Sure.
I mean, anybody can talk, but, we've got to deliver. And that's what really matters in the end.
What are your most important things that you want to do over the next year?
My goal would be a year from now, we've gone into production with 2 games, and we're getting pretty close to releasing a big title. That would be my goal. But at the end of the day, my real goal is when I go to Expo or I go to TPF or go something a year from now, people are like, we trust American Pinball. They are doing the right things. If you want to know what my goal is, that's my goal. Whether I make 1,000 games a year, 5,000 games a year, or 500, what I want people saying is they build great machines and they have great people. And I feel good about buying a machine from AP. That's what I want. That's my ultimate goal.
Well, look, Bryan, we appreciate your time, and we hope this is the first of many talks that we have down the road. Thanks for joining us on Flipping Out Pinball Podcast. Before we leave, though, for those that might want to get on board, put in a resume at American Pinball, they want to join, how do they reach out? How do they get their foot in the water?
Yeah, I mean, I was told the best way to do it right now is just shoot Ron an email. It's Ron, R-O-N, at AmericanPinball.com. As far as me getting to meet some people, I'm trying to get out to some shows. I will definitely be at TPF. We're going to have a booth there, and I'm looking forward to really kind of meeting people in person, engaging the community. I think that's a great event, and I'm looking forward to seeing folks there.